In the overcrowded, echoing corridors of Southern California's prison system during the early 1950s, a quiet but deadly revolution was taking place. Young Hispanic men, many incarcerated for minor offenses, were left to navigate a brutal world divided by race, power, and survival. In these metal cages and cement yards, where violence was both currency and law, a brotherhood emerged. It was not born from desire for wealth or notoriety, but from a basic, undeniable need to survive. That brotherhood would become La M, the Mexican Mafia. La M's origins are steeped in necessity. Within the walls of California's prisons, Hispanics were frequently preyed upon by more established groups. Blacks, whites, and other ethnic gangs that dominated certain wings of the facilities. A young inmate could enter the system with nothing and be forced to fight or die simply to endure another day. Out of this environment, a structured alliance was formed. Membership was exclusive, protection absolute, and loyalty beyond question. From the very beginning, the Mexican Mafia distinguished itself through a rigid hierarchy and a code of conduct that demanded obedience. The letter M, emblazoned as a tattoo on members' hands, arms, and chests, became more than a symbol. It was a mark of identity, a warning, and a promise. Those who bore it were pledged for life. Breaking that oath meant death. Initiation into La M was grueling, often requiring violent proof of loyalty. Members were tested, sometimes forced to attack or kill rivals, proving not only their courage, but also their willingness to prioritize the gang above family, friends, and even their own survival instincts. By the 1960s, the organization had matured. It was no longer merely a group of inmates banded together for protection. La M had become a disciplined bureaucratic force. Orders flowed from one prison to another, carried by word of mouth, letters, or trusted intermediaries. The gang developed a governance system: shot callers, lieutenants, soldiers, and initiates. Each had defined roles, and each member understood the unyielding rules of the organization. Punishments were swift, public, and merciless. The Mexican Mafia's influence extended beyond prison walls as it began to infiltrate street gangs throughout Southern California. Street-level Hispanic gangs were soon required to pledge allegiance to La M. Those who resisted faced brutal consequences. Turf was controlled indirectly, with La M enforcing taxes on drug dealers and street hustlers, ensuring that profits flowed upward to the incarcerated leadership. By the late 1970s, the gang's reach had grown exponentially. Los Angeles neighborhoods like East LA, the South Bay, and the San Fernando Valley had local gangs that carried out the will of La M. These street crews were extensions of the prison-based power structure, making the organization virtually untouchable. The 1980s crack cocaine epidemic created unprecedented opportunities and challenges for La M. The streets were awash with cash and violence, and the gang was perfectly positioned to capitalize. They exacted tribute from street-level dealers, punished those who broke the rules, and brokered alliances that expanded their influence even further. The Mexican Mafia's control over the drug trade in Los Angeles was meticulous, a carefully orchestrated system enforced with both fear and precision. Any gang attempting to operate outside their authority quickly learned the lethal consequences. The leadership structure of La M also ensured longevity. While street gangs often fractured due to internal conflicts or law enforcement crackdowns, La M's incarcerated leadership maintained authority over every chapter. Orders were passed discreetly, often through coded language or trusted couriers. This communication network allowed the gang to coordinate hits, enforce taxes, and maintain control over operations hundreds of miles from their prison origin. Their secrecy made them nearly impossible for law enforcement to infiltrate, creating an aura of omnipresence and inevitability. Despite the violence, La M operated with strategic intelligence. they understood the power of loyalty, fear, and psychological dominance. Members were rewarded for obedience and punished for defiance. Rival gangs learned quickly that crossing the Mexican Mafia was a mistake with permanent consequences. Their reputation spread across Southern California through the whispers of prisoners, the tattoos on their hands, and the headlines of law enforcement agencies struggling to contain their influence. By the late 1980s, the Mexican Mafia's influence had reached a new level. They were no longer just a regional prison gang. They had become a national force. Their model inspired chapters in other states, and each new chapter required formal authorization from incarcerated leaders in California. This ensured that La M's power remained centralized even as it spread geographically. From Seattle to Phoenix, Houston to Philadelphia, affiliates were expected to pay tribute and obey the directives of the gang's central command. Even as police and federal authorities attempted to dismantle their operations, La Ma adapted. High-profile arrests did not dismantle the organization. Instead, they reinforced the remaining members' resolve and taught younger recruits the importance of discipline, secrecy, and hierarchy. The Mexican Mafia had not only survived decades of incarceration, gang wars, and law enforcement pressure, it had thrived. The influence of La Ma also extended beyond crime. Their control over street gangs meant they could dictate local dynamics in neighborhoods, influence drug markets, and shape the culture of Southern California Hispanic communities. Their presence was both feared and respected, creating a parallel social order in which the law of La Ma often outweighed official law. In essence, the rise of the Mexican Mafia is a story of power forged in the crucible of prison violence, survival, and strategy. From a handful of desperate inmates in the 1950s to a national network with influence stretching across multiple states, La Ma transformed the landscape of organized crime in America. Its reach, resilience, and ruthlessness have made it one of the most formidable criminal organizations in history. A testament to the enduring power of organization, fear, and unbreakable loyalty. By the 1990s, La Ma had evolved into a fully operational syndicate, with influence in every major prison and many neighborhoods across California. Among its most notorious leaders were individuals who embodied the gang's deadly combination of intelligence, brutality, and vision. Names like Joe "Pegleg" Morgan became legendary, not just for the crimes committed, but for their ability to unite rival factions under the Mexican Mafia banner. Morgan, a war veteran turned inmate, understood the power of strategy. He saw that to maintain dominance, La Ma had to control not just the streets, but the entire social hierarchy within prisons. Morgan's philosophy was simple: loyalty first, fear second, and survival always. He recruited members not just for physical strength, but for cunning, reliability, and the ability to enforce the law without hesitation. Under his guidance, La Ma became more than a gang. It became an institution. The organization began dictating the behavior of street gangs from behind bars, issuing taxes on drug operations, and punishing disobedience with lethal efficiency. A strike against one member in prison could trigger waves of retaliation on the streets, extending La M's power far beyond prison walls. One of the most remarkable aspects of La M's rise was its ability to bend traditional gang allegiances to its will. While most prison and street gangs operated along strict racial or neighborhood lines, La Ma cultivated alliances when strategically necessary. This pragmatism allowed them to maintain dominance even as rival gangs attempted to challenge them. Their reach was not absolute, but calculated. Every move was deliberate, every alliance and betrayal part of a long-term plan. The 1980s and 1990s also saw La Ma take advantage of the explosive drug market. Crack cocaine and methamphetamine surged through Los Angeles neighborhoods, and the Mexican Mafia leveraged its organizational structure to control distribution and enforce compliance. Local gangs collected profits, but a portion was always sent back to the incarcerated leadership. This not only funded operations, but reinforced the prison-to-street hierarchy, ensuring that even members outside the walls knew their place and their responsibilities. Violence remained a key instrument of control. Stories of La M's retaliatory hits became part of gang lore. Members were expected to respond immediately to any perceived disrespect or threat. Those who hesitated faced not only internal punishment, but often death. This uncompromising approach cemented the gang's reputation and discouraged rivals from challenging their authority. In some cases, entire neighborhoods learned to obey the dictates of La M simply to survive. By the late 1990s, federal authorities had begun to recognize La M as a highly organized criminal enterprise. Task forces investigated the gang, conducting raids, surveillance, and wiretaps. Yet despite arrests and high-profile indictments, La M adapted. Their structure allowed incarcerated leaders to continue issuing orders, while newer recruits filled vacancies in street gangs. Each wave of law enforcement pressure seemed only to strengthen the organization's resolve and refine its methods of secrecy and control. The turn of the millennium marked a new era of expansion. La M began establishing chapters outside California, creating a national network of influence. Affiliate gangs in states like Texas, Arizona, and even as far as the East Coast operated under the Mexican Mafia's oversight. Authorization from California-based leaders was required for any new chapter, and tribute payments ensured the flow of resources and enforcement of rules remained unbroken. La M had effectively created a franchise model for organized crime, combining centralized authority with local autonomy. By now, La M's influence had permeated both prisons and communities, with a level of discipline and coordination rare among criminal organizations. Even as younger generations entered the streets, they were indoctrinated into the gang's culture. Tattoos marking allegiance, coded signs and symbols, and an understanding that loyalty to the family came above all else. Betrayal was not tolerated, and disobedience often carried lethal consequences. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of La M's story is its adaptability. While other gangs dissolved under law enforcement pressure or internal conflict, La M survived and evolved. Its leaders understood that power is maintained not only through violence, but through intelligence, strategy, and the careful cultivation of influence. Every action, from enforcement to alliance building, was calculated to preserve the organization and ensure its longevity. Today, La M remains a formidable force within both the prison system and street-level criminal networks. Its influence stretches from California to states across the country, shaping the operations of countless Hispanic street gangs. The organization that began as a desperate attempt at survival in overcrowded prisons has grown into one of the most feared and structured criminal organizations in American history. Its legacy is complex, a mixture of brutality, strategy, loyalty, and fear that continues to reverberate through communities and prisons alike. The rise of La M is not merely a story of crime. It is a story of adaptation, resilience, and unyielding control. From the desperate youth of 1950s Los Angeles prisons to the sprawling coordinated national network of today, the Mexican Mafia's story is a testament to the power of organization, strategic thinking, and the consequences of absolute loyalty. It is a legacy written in fear, blood, and the indelible mark of a gang that shaped the course of American gang culture for generations to come.